So it's the new year and you want to implement some new homebrew rules at your game table, whether they're my homebrew rules that you found here on this channel or ones you've brewed up yourself. I got 7 different ways for you to put those homebrews into your tabletop game, no matter if you're in the middle of a campaign or if you're about to start one. I'm going to start off with tips you can use before you've started a campaign, and we'll keep on moving through to give you some tips for even if you're in the middle of a 3-year-long campaign, you can still implement some brand new homebrews. I got you covered, so let's go. Homebrew tip number 1 is session 0. The first video I did on this channel was about session 0, but now I'm giving it specifically about adding homebrew rules to your game, because every session 0 that I have is completely different. Yes, I have universal things I try to accomplish with every session 0, but specifically about homebrews, it's different every single time because your players are different, the group's different, the campaign setting is different. What type of game you and your players want to play directly ties into what homebrew rules you might want to use. If you want to run a survival themed campaign, you should add survival themed homebrews so that it feels that way. If you want to run a horror game, you should do that too. And I got an entire survival and horror themed PDF that'll link down in the description too. I got all the homebrews here. You also really got to keep in mind what kind of players you have. How close do you want to stick to the rules as written, or how many different extra homebrews do you want to add in, like races or subclasses? Or maybe one of your players wants to use my brand new point by feet system to build their character that way. And I'm kind of joking around about all these different homebrews I have because I have so many, but there's not a single game I've ever played that I've used all of them in. Not a single one of my campaigns, one-shots, or whatever have ever ran the exact same rule set every single time. This is why I wanted to have this conversation with you guys, so you can figure out what homebrews your group wants to do and how to implement them. For example, my homebrew for the help action, instead of just granting advantage to one of your allies, is you roll an actual D10 alongside your ally and they add that to their roll, truly symbolizing how much you help them, whether it's a 1 or a 10. But if I have a bard in the party, I might not use that homebrew or even pitch it to my players to use in the first place. Session 0 is where you have all these conversations, but how the heck do you go about it? How do you pitch it to your players, and what do you choose? The number 2 homebrew tip is a buffet spreadsheet. I really don't have the best names for these things, but really the idea is an actual buffet of all the different possible homebrews that I keep for myself on a spreadsheet. Now on this list is not a heavily detailed mechanical explanation of every single rule. It's just a generic word or even phrase that I know what I'm talking about. Now for me, I have an Excel spreadsheet of hundreds of homebrews, and no, I do not bring that to every session 0 and be like, okay guys, which ones do you want? No. Before that session 0 even starts, I know what players I'm dealing with, and a lot of times we even talk casually about what rules we'd want to do anyway. This is where you could share all my videos with your friends and prep them. And this tip is for both players and dungeon masters to be able to bring those homebrews and ideas to the table to decide on together. But the final say, of course, is in the dungeon master's hands of whatever's going to be officially in the game. Everybody's list is going to be different, but I would at least separate your list into different categories having to do with character creation, combat, general game rules, resting, whatever. So when the time comes to talk about homebrew stuff, you have a list of simple bullet point ideas that you can pitch to the group. Which leads me right into homebrew tip number 3, is to have a conversation about why you're wanting to implement these rules and provide some options to be able to customize this for your group specifically. Don't be super strict and rigid whenever you bring in a homebrew rule to pitch to the group. Have some wiggle room for the group to be able to actually talk about, collaborate, and see if they like it or not, or what things they want to change. A lot of times homebrews can add extra complexity to the game, but sometimes it's worth it for the overall feel. But some homebrews, like a lot of the ones I try and make here on this channel, actually make the game easier. So make sure you're prepared before you pitch that homebrew to them, or just share that video like I said. I'll explain it for you. A good example of some of these fast-paced homebrew videos I've been doing, and one of them was advantage stacking, where instead of just having advantage just wash away and cancel out, every additional advantage you get on top of advantage becomes an extra +2 that you add onto the roll. It feels really great. I love the rule. My groups have loved the rule, but leave that option for wiggle room at your table to have it be a +1 instead. So at least it's something there instead of just nothing. So basically, to combine all those into one big tip is at your session 0, prepare a list that you're able to accurately describe the benefits of. And then once you describe that and pitch it to the group, be flexible to change it. Time out. We all have things that we want to shake up our game systems with, different things that just feel off to us specifically that might not feel off to everyone else at the table. And sometimes if we get in our own heads and we just start homebrewing and don't run it by other people, people, we could get a little crazy. I know I have a group of people called the Homebrew Council that I really run some stuff by to make sure I'm not going crazy with my homebrews, but I recommend for you to do the same thing, and you can do that over on our Discord. It's completely free to join. We have about 1,000 people over there now. We have a whole bunch of homebrew minds to be able to collaborate on. Put your homebrew into one of the many homebrew channels we have over there and see what people think. Maybe as a group, you can find some more cracks before you throw it at your party. Back to the tips. So now we're gonna move closer to that campaign in the form of a one-shot, because sometimes homebrew rules, you don't even know if you and your group would like it or not, and you're kind of nervous to throw it into your game fully. Why not throw it into a one-shot and see what happens? If it's a combat system or some sort of even a character creation where you want to make characters and just play with them in a one-shot and see if the thing works, go for it in a one-shot. This really is one of the best ways to get your hands in on some of these homebrew rules and see how they actually feel in a game. Some behind the scenes here is a lot of the homebrew ideas that come up with. I play test in one shots. I like it. I put it into an actual campaign, and then I give it to you guys. You can test out things like my rest system, where you change around how rests work. Gritty games where you dial up the feeling of death to see if it really feels that way in a one shot. And if those characters dies, who cares? I've also gone crazy with entire magic systems for 5th edition that I've tried out in one shots that I really love. They're a little crazy though. For tip number 5, we're in it now. We have started a campaign you're already playing now. It's too late to implement any homebrews now. We're already playing. The ship has sailed. No. That is so far from true. I have an entire homebrew video I did where I talked about cool ways to implement homebrews where you can actually add in homebrew mechanics as part of the story of some big cool moments that happen. The example I gave in that video is a homebrew that I have from my initiative system where I let you be able to hold your initiative to go with your allies and literally go tandem at the same time. It was a really cool homebrew. My players loved it, but I tied it mid-campaign into the story because part of their downtime they spent training with each other to figure out how to fight better as a group. You get your cool training montage, then you get a cool homebrew after it's all done. Now I'm not counting that one as a tip because I already covered it in the video. So tip number 5 is if you want to try out a homebrew, try it out in one specific encounter or one specific monster even. Maybe there's a certain homebrew ability that you're not sure if you want to give it to a player or not because it could be too strong. Give it to an NPC or some sort of enemy of some kind, throw it at your players, use it on them, and see how it feels. You can do the same thing with a homebrew spell that you don't know is too strong. Give it to a caster and cast it at your players. And this is also kind of beautiful because just like I said about the story and it making sense, it makes a lot more sense for your wizard to be able to figure out how to cast that spell that was just cast at him. I also have a special skirmish initiative system that I've never done a video on, but I wanted to try and throw it at my players. So there was one really fast-paced scenario that I wanted to have, almost like a chase scene, and I threw it at him. I gave him the real quick rules of how the whole thing worked. It was specific just for this scenario, and we tried it out. Now, yes, normally we ran combat as usual, and we knew and had an established initiative system, but for this specific encounter, it was really cool. I tried something else out. Could we have used this initiative system for every fight in the entire game and choose to have that be the homebrew initiative system? Sure, we could have, but I just wanted to try it out. I'll probably do a video on it. It's simple. But that's the tip, is to find little windows to give your players a taste of these things, and if you guys liked it, then keep using it. Or only use it in those special circumstances, then it's even more unique. Time out. It's a new year and I'm giving y'all a bunch of new tips to be able to add new homebrews into your game. Well, what if you want some more new homebrews for yourself? One of my new perks over on Patreon are monthly PDFs, and we've had over 100 patrons increase in the last 2 weeks since I've started throwing this out there, and the quality of these things I make sure to be next level. These huge PDFs that I give are broken up into 3 different tiers at different price ranges so you can get your hands on whatever version of it you want, or the whole thing. There's always a theme for each of these PDFs, with December being Tasha's Calder of Everything, with a point buy feat system to be able to build your own characters with, a point buy system, a magic tattoo system for actual magic tattoos and how I run it in my game table, and some tattoo subclasses. December's theme is wild magic, and I have a D300 wild magic surge table that I made from scratch, along with a bunch of other stuff. It's gonna be in that PDF too about wild magic. Or if these PDFs aren't your thing, that's fine. I have a whole bunch of videos coming out about a ton of different homebrew stuff that I got coming week after week. Back to the brews. For number 6, we're getting a lot more serious now, and we've actually decided as a group to implement a homebrew rule into your game officially. Don't put the pressure on yourselves of having this be some absolute fact that's now gonna always be a part of your game. Have it be on a trial basis that's openly between you and your players agree on. We're gonna see how this thing goes. We'll go 3 sessions and then we'll have a conversation after that 3rd session to see how we like it. Which brings me smoothly into tip number 7, is don't be afraid to tweak homebrews, change homebrews, nerf homebrews, buff homebrews, whatever you need to do mid-game. This tip is for both players and dungeon masters. When you come to the table and you've chosen to use a homebrew rule, whether it's yours or one of your friends, be open-minded. If you as a player made your own personal subclass that you really, really love and your DM is allowing you to use it, don't freak out if they think it's too strong, and be able to have that open conversation if it's too weak to be able to buff it. The purpose of homebrews in your games is to find those different things about the rules as written that feel a little off, tweak them to where it feels better. And if it doesn't feel better, then change it and keep tweaking it, or throw it out entirely. One of the most frequent Dungeon Master questions that I get are whenever there's an item that's put into the game, some homebrew item or some homebrew subclass or some homebrew spell that someone has that's it's just too strong. There should be an understood feeling at that table that if this thing's out there and guy, whew, that's way too strong. Maybe we need to cut this back, and maybe it has only once per long rest as a cooldown, or maybe it doesn't do that much damage, or maybe there's some sort of negative effect that this item now has too. Or maybe that item's just too strong right now and it's okay for later, so then maybe somehow the item breaks and it becomes part of the story again. You see where I'm trying to go with this? Try and have the story explain these random retcons that you're trying to do so that it doesn't feel so jarring. Have it be part of the story where this item's broken now and they have to be able to find different pieces, and after 3 or 4 levels, now it's fixed and it's the same as it was before, but it's okay now because they're stronger now. You could do this in a ton of different ways and have a curse be on the item, so now there's some negative effect that goes along with it that the player has to figure out how to release. I could keep going with this, but that's not the point of the video. What I'm trying to say here, my final analogy, is video game patch updates. We've all played plenty of video games where there's that one certain character that has a patch come out with all these changes and it's way too strong. Then they nerf it and then it's way too weak. Those types of things happen all the time in game development. So don't be afraid to put those into your table too, and you all need to be on the same page, and don't get too butthurt if the cool thing you had now isn't as cool. Come up with different ways to play the game and think around it. You all want to collectively be on the same page and know that no one's out to get each other, and you're just trying to have a fun experience. I want to start the new year off with some new homebrew methods to be able to add homebrews into your game, because that's what I'm all about here on this channel, is shaking up the game, making it more customizable to you so you and your friends can enjoy better and have more fun. With all the New Year's stuff going on right now, 2020 has been a crazy year, both good and bad. The bad stuff's of course obvious, but I'm trying not to focus on that because this year was huge for me. I started a YouTube channel and had my firstborn son. We've gone from no subscribers to over 13,000 subscribers, no patrons to over 300 patrons now, which is another huge goal we just hit. So if you want to join in on any of that craziness and buckle up for what's to come, I have so many things planned for 2021. Then hit the subscribe button right here, join Patreon right here, and I got more videos for you right here. So until next time, stay creative and think outside that box. Peace.